All right. So thanks everybody for being on the call. Like I said, I'm excited that we're going to have a good turnout. Actually, and I shouldn't even tempt fate with the weather forecast, but the weather forecast looks really nice for Sunday as well. So we're going to start. I'm going to do a little poll first, and then I'm going to hand it over to George. He's going to go through some things. We'll be real casual, right? So feel free to pipe in with questions as you have them. And then he's going to hand it back to me, and we'll go over some of the kind of details for Sunday. So let me do the poll. I'm going to launch the poll. Can everybody see it?
Oh my God. What is this?
I feel like we need poll music, you know, like the do 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 do. Do 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 do.
You can keep singing it.
So how many people have been over 20 years?
Well, we only have 8 of our 15 yet, so.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
getting close to that. I'm probably at
I said, do I
18.
count?
I was thinking about that, you know, it's like we should have just made the category my whole life kind of thing. So
Yeah.
10 of 16.
Now, for number 4, is it like your past experience or kind of where you want to be?
Or I don't know. That was just general, like more for the clinic thing. Are you trying to learn more about the skipper stuff or the crew stuff or both? So
Excellent. Thank you.
okay, 2 more people. Another couple of seconds here, and then we'll go with what we have. Anybody still voting? Okay, and polling. I just ended it, and we're going to share the results, I think. All right. So most of you guys are sailing the clinic. Wow, a lot of experience here. So that's awesome. A lot of over 20s. How many years have you sailed? Can you guys see the results?
Yep.
Okay. A nice even curve there on how many years of sailing the Snipe. And mostly skippers, but a few crews and a few boats. Nice. Okay. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to you if I can figure out how to do this.
Okay.
More. Oh, come on. George. More. Make host. Okay, here comes, buddy.
Okay.
All yours.
All right. So what we're going to do tonight is start just talking about boat handling is the whole plan. And so in doing that, the Plines were generous enough to take some videos of them sailing. And that's why Lisa's probably going to get something stiffer in a minute to drink.
Yes.
But,
the good, the bad, and the ugly.
just wondering if everybody can see my screen right now. Is that everybody see the sailboat sailing on my screen?
Yeah, man.
Oh, good. Okay. So they took us out sailing and they went out and did some tacks and jibes. And so we're going to go through and see this video of them tacking and jibing. And then we'll go through see some video that we took probably 20 years ago where Eric Wilcox and I were doing some stuff with Vince Castellana. And so we'll see how the difference is. And, you know, we can all tack. It's pretty simple to tack and jibe a Snipe. We all remember that we're sailing a square boat, and it's a heavy square boat, and it's a really old boat, and it doesn't like to turn very fast. So one of the first things we'll remember sailing a Snipe is that we just got to take our time and let it do what it's to do. Lean in, try to ride that chine, roll it over, come across, and do the thing. And you know what I like here, we can see what they're doing is, you know, they do a nice little lean in. You know, Alex starts to do a twist. We'll talk about that. The skipper wants to kind of twist their legs, even more than that. So if you're sitting in a chair right now and you're the skipper, you know, if the bow is to your left, you know, angle your legs to the left, and your left calf right now is something that Alex really wants to use to pull off that deck. He wants to put his calf on the inside of that cockpit to pull off of. And that's where he's going to get his ability to turn in. So if he was to sit straight out, if you're sitting straight in your chair and he sat straight out, he couldn't get his body back in. So he turns his body nicely there. And, you know, Lisa's doing a nice job here of balancing herself off the old jib sheet. And she's, you know, just holding herself in. And that's where she gets her balance from to come back on. You know, Alex is able to hold on to the main sheet. The main sheet's really nice and tight here. And we come through and, you know, we've got everybody's coming across. You have the standard 1 foot and the new strap coming across. The second foot gets in later. And what I like here is that, you know, I call it Lisa's right hand here is trying to hit Alex in the face. And that's just a great motion right there. That when we can get that crew to hit the skipper in the face, it's kind of hard to stop on it because it happens so fast here. But we hit the skipper in the face, and after we hit the skipper in the face with this jib sheet, we hike out. So I wouldn't mind seeing Lisa hit the strap a little harder right now and hike out. And then as you hike out, you know, bringing in that aft hand, that left hand in this case, to bring the jib the rest of the way in. And then after that, your foot finds the other strap. Those are the absolute basics of the tack. Let's let that play out. They do a few more for us. Alex looking around, goes through.
Hey, George,
That,
if I can
yes, sir.
interrupt.
Yeah.
You mentioned the Snipe as a slow tacker versus a fast tacking boat.
Yeah.
We got some college sailors on the call. You know, what's the difference between an FJ or a laser and the Snipe? Obviously chines, but what does that mean? What are you talking about on slowing
Well,
it down?
it's form stability, Gavin, that, you know, if you put a shoebox in the water, as you push on one side of that shoebox, the square edge goes in, the boat gets more stable. So it's harder to push that shoebox over. But if you take a 2.5 liter bottle of Coke and you put it in the water and you push on one side, that thing will just spin. And so if you're going to sail an FJ, when you go to tack the FJ, that thing's going to just rotate and spin real easily. But you go to tack that shoebox and it's hard to get that thing to roll. And that side of that shoebox wants to track straight. So is that help
Yeah, thank
answer
you
that?
very much. Yeah.
Okay. It's the best analogy I got right now is shoebox.
We'll take it.
Coke cans.
We'll take it.
Yeah. But you know, it's just that you'll see that over and over in the Snipe, that you just got to take your time with it, and you can get the idea is that the Snipe likes to stop. So if you can keep the speed out that you had going in, you're doing well. You know, you're not always gonna be able to go faster. So they're doing a great job here. But one thing we want to see them doing more is we want to see them moving together more. You know, as we see this, even though they've been married for a long time, they haven't practiced for a long time. And they're moving a little bit. You know, that one's actually pretty good, but some of their maneuvers over the course of the day here are not as together as we might want to see. This is actually kind of a neat one. Going back a second, is that Lisa came out, helped flatten, did a great job flattening, but then you can see the hull of the boat here is getting flat, and so she comes back and sits in to the cockpit so the boat doesn't overflat, and that's really critical for a crew that, you know, the skipper needs that help sometimes to flatten that extra, get the boat right, and then come back in. And always doing that nice, try to hit the skipper in the face maneuver before she gets in the last pull.
We're married. I
So
like to hit
that's-
him in the face.
Right? That's why I have a long tiller extension. I get the crew back with the sunglasses. You know, jibing, we'll skip to jibing here. I don't know if we want to, maybe we don't know, because we have that great video from Upwind. Wouldn't mind just transferring to this other video here. And it's just right over here somewhere. So this might be a little older. This is a video we did. We took a brand new boat, took the plastic wrap off, rigged it up, and then did video of the boat doing that. And then Eric and I took the boat out sailing that same day. And you see we have all the same motions that they have. You know, weather chine, always out of the water. You know, as we go into attack, you know, the main sheet is pretty hard, trying to help the boat turn. Crews are inside, you know, trying to help the boat turn. And then as it comes across, Eric's doing the same thing, holding onto the old jib sheet to balance. We're twisting our bodies. He stands up. He's a little cross ahead of me in the lighter stuff. And so Eric and I, we tried to learn how to tack, and we would tack every boat length trying to learn how to tack. And that's how we got good when we were sailing really hard in the day. Let's let this play through for a moment. So my style's a little different in that as we
Dawn, honey, are you on there?
roll this back, you can see I twist my body a little bit. I get my one calf in to hold myself up. You know, leaning aft, my aft calf is holding myself in the boat. We roll. As I roll, I'm trying to ease the main about 3 feet. And ease that main about 3 feet. You know, now we can come out, we can flatten the boat. If we flatten the boat, we can also pump on the way in. And so we take our time, but we get a little bit of pump out of that jibe as we go on. That's one extra thing we're trying to work on with a snipe is, you know, just getting that extra ease and that pump. A little bad tack on Eric's part on the jib sheet. But the crews and skipper are really close together. Big pump on the main, on the flatten there. A little extra pump. And we can see here in these early ones, he's not holding on to anything except for the jib sheet. Later on, he starts holding onto the rail in some of his tacks.
Hey Eric, this is Zach. I had a question. So are you concerned at all about over trimming the main when you're going into the tacks?
You know, I look at it as if I trim the main harder, I'm going to head the boat up into the wind. If I
Okay.
ease the main, I'm going to turn away from the wind. So I don't mind trimming the main harder into the tack. And so it's actually usually trimmed pretty hard into the tack. And we just see that. So that I have the sail loose here. I'm usually probably trimming in a little bit. And then, you know, the skipper's rotating their body. Crew's holding off on the old sheet. You can see how tight the foot of the jib is here as the crew's going across.
You should be watching this.
And we can see he comes up, you know, he does the face, you know, tries to hit skipper in the face. And you see his aft hand grabbing the remaining part of the sheet to bring it down. Both flattens. And then as it flattens, there's the switch for the main sheet and tiller. And then we flatten and do the final pump there. This one actually, it's hard to catch because he does it so quickly, but the jib sheet actually gets caught on the shroud in this tack. And so what he does here is he takes the weather jib sheet with his right hand here. You can just see it just takes weather jib sheet, pulls that to weather, and then gets the final trim on the jib sheet. So if you get that caught, that's how you clean that quickly. And then, so questions on upwind, I can go back and rewind that, or?
So one thing too, and it may or may not be obvious, but particularly for you know, the over 20s in the crowd who, you know, aren't necessarily as strong about getting their carcass up from the, you know, at the bottom of a roll tack up to the high side again. The Snipe is pretty good about having a couple of, you know, like places you can grab on the other side of the tank. Like there's often a, you know, a hole in the tank that you can grab onto to help pull yourself up.
Thoughts, Lexi? Did you do it the same way, Lexi?
I've never grabbed the other rail. I usually just throw myself.
Yeah, because you're
Okay.
strong. But what did you have any other thoughts about on the crewing, from the crewing perspective?
I'd say, like, unlike college sailing, there's no butt like plunk to do the roll, which is something that like Augie has really like harped on. Is that everything? First of all, he agreed with you on the one body solution where like you need to move. Like he emphasizes moving at the exact same time all the time. When you flatten, you should be going out at the same time. When you roll, you should be shoulders out at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
But it really is, it's a shoulder motion, and there's not a lot of like, he would get on me if I even like plunked my butt down on like when to flatten. You need to make it graceful and not shake the rig a bunch.
Yeah, I would agree with that. We slide in just a little bit and we try to hang out on the old side a long time and then run across the middle and don't spend any time in the middle. But yeah, the more you can stay together, the more conservation of energy, and really my thought process is that less is more. The less that you do, the more you perform.
And to make it like it's a lot more smooth and agile, I think, than college sailing. In college sailing, I was just trying to bring as much power as possible out of the boat. In this, you have to work with it. You're not going to make a 50-pound metal centerboard work for you like that. So
Hey, George,
Yeah.
from a steering perspective, I've always thought, you mentioned the Snipe is a heavier boat than the typical college dinghy. And so you can use that momentum that you've got going into the tack to get to weather. So I see you steer really quick right there.
Okay.
What I would coach people on is to steer slowly into head to wind. Okay, so you get like half a boat length of upwind while you're tacking, and then you jam it across when you're head to wind to finish the tack up. And I just noticed, this was a long time ago, but it seems to me on this video that you're steering pretty quickly through the tack. And now looking back, many years later, are you steering the right timing, or could you have slowed it down to better your performance through that tack?
That's a good question. I think what I've always watched is that you have people that like to hike you have people that like to hike right now while the sails are full. And I never understood that. I like to sit in a little bit to help the boat turn. So I'm not sure if I'm steering that hard, but it doesn't feel like I'm jamming the tiller hard against it. It always feels pretty calm. So
When I say jam, I mean you steer slowly as you go up into head to wind, and then the closer you get to head to wind, that's when you throw it all the way across to get through head to wind. And what you're doing is you're achieving some ground upwind, basically, as opposed to 90 degrees or whatever.
If you were sailing a super heavy 12 meter, you would absolutely say that you want to coast for a little bit before you go. Maybe it's just the snipe tiller is so long, Gavin, that it just looks like we're steering harder.
Yeah.
I know exactly what you're saying. I don't feel like I'm not pushing on it to create drag, if is the best I can.
Yeah, and the other thing you're doing is when you are flattening, certainly the tiller is in the middle, and that's important too, right? Or the rudder, I should say.
I hadn't realized that, but that is always nice when you have less helm. We do flatten and we pull the main in afterward to get that extra pump, and you do prefer to do that afterward. That's nice to see.
I just want to chime in on this real quick and say that to Gavin's point, I was actually through these tacks of this video, I was thinking the same thing. I was like, this just seems like he's turned just a little quick. But I agree that it is a long tiller. It's kind of deceiving.
Yeah. Henry, you got anything on what you've done over the last 30 years in this night?
More than 30.
More than 30?
Am I unmuted? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, I mean, my only thought is maybe to some of the newer folks, obviously George and Eric are, really top-notch sailors and have been sailing these boats a long time. They're doing a great job of what I call manhandling the boat. If you're new to the boat, it might be a little over-aggressive to roll too hard. If it were me, I'd probably flip over. So I would say just, maybe shoot for half of that, and you're really shooting for the smoothness.
Right. Thank you, Henry. That was the early video where they did we had the GoPro on the back. We were doing kind of 101, like old smooth sailing versus this was the college level sailing.
Yeah. So but Eric and I used to go out and we would sail for a quarter mile and tack every boat length, and that's how we figured out how to tack. So it was a lot of fun, but it was a lot of work back in the day to do that. So, Carter, anyone else, thoughts and differences and changes on this boat?
I'd like to mention a little bit of the college experience coming into it too, from the skipper's perspective. I completely agree with trimming the main super hard going into the tack to help the boat turn into the wind. But something that my assistant coach at College of Charleston, Connor Bluen, taught me too is that you keep the main trimmed in super hard as you're still going through the tack. And what happens there is that when the main is trimmed a lot harder, it's going to backwind earlier. So as soon as you and your crew roll simultaneously, and as you're hopping up to the high side of the boat, for a split second there, when you're jumping up, you and your crew's weight are not necessarily in the boat. You're not pressing the boat down. So what happens is that the boat rises up a touch out of the water a little bit too, And if you still have your main trimmed in super hard, it's going to fill early, it's going to backwind earlier, and it's actually going to help the boat roll a little more too. So a little bit, the way I would compare it is that you're just facilitating the boat rolling instead of forcing the boat to roll with just throwing your weight around.
Right. We're just hanging out, letting it turn.
Yeah. So if you keep, and another thing that he would say a lot with that too is that you would keep your main trimmed in super hard, and it's not that you're using your weight to force the boat down to flatten it either, is that it's still a super smooth motion. You don't want to slam on the high side of the boat, but when you ease your main out to let the boat flatten is when that's going to happen. Easing the main to help the boat accelerate too, and timing that with when you want to press the boat down is when you want to ease your main to help it get that little scooch forward.
Yeah, so it's kind of what we're doing here, a little S-turn tack, and that the main's pretty darn easy. The jib comes in. Jib's got to come in so you can complete the tack and get the squirt out of it.
Mm-hmm.
And then the boat flattens, and then we pump the main and get in that little extra pump.
Yep.
So, yeah, I think we're all on the same page. The trick is to do it smoothly.
Mm-hmm.
If that's good on upwind, we can go downwind now if you guys are ready, unless there's someone has something else. Anyone? All right. Well, that's easy. So I can figure out how to get the screen back.
I'll throw one out there. How does this compare to like a 505 in terms of the roll? Do you guys have any experience with that?
I only sailed one once.
No.
I think you're back to the shoebox versus bottle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know if you heard that, whoever was speaking there, but
No, I have. I got thrown on one of those as a first time like dinghy racing, and it was a pretty interesting experience. Definitely different than sailing on the bigger boats. So.
Yeah. So, all right, we're gonna go through and see what Lisa and Alex have given us for going downwind. They have some good fun.
You gonna show the good one first or the blooper reel?
They're all the good ones, Lisa.
If I'm steering, it's probably more the blooper reel.
All the good ones. So
bad screwing.
So first thing here, we notice that, sealing the shoebox, we've got one side of the shoebox out of the water. So both upwind and downwind, we always want to keep one chine out of the water, unless it's over 15 and we need a little control. You guys can all see that screen, hopefully. Did I share it?
Yeah,
Yep.
you did.
Okay, good. So they're going to go through, and Alex is going to jibe. Now, Alex is going to get ready with the jib or the pole launch line, and that's going to be the first thing we're going to talk about. Because Alex didn't really do what we wanted to do with the pole line. Well, first off, the big problem is that, it did get stuck on the forestay, right? But when we come back here, the crew's really got to figure out how much line to let off. I mean, we can let it all the way out and let it come back to the mast and pull it all back out, but that's not efficient. So what we like to do is we'll take this jib pole launch line and we'll take the pole launch line and go from here to the shroud and back to the cleat. And by running the line out to the shroud and back to the cleat and putting your hand where the line is at the cleat now, that typically allows enough line to come back so that when we come back here and let the pole out, the pole should clear the forestay, and it didn't this time. And so that's problem number one of what we like to do on a jibe. So, that's, good recovery on that. But if the crew goes and just measures out from the mast, whatever that distance is, you probably could have put a mark on the sheet. We never have, but that would have solved that first problem that Alex had. So, oops, how do we get back to that? Actually, I noticed one of the things that the jib hired, if we look back at this jib, it could probably be a little bit tighter for this light air. When it gets lighter air, I don't mind having a little tighter luff on the jib here when we're going downhill. I'll choke it up an inch or two, and when it gets real light, I'll choke it up 5 inches when I'm going downwind. So as we go through and see another jibe, Alex is going to take this pull down here. But we have a few things that happen as we go in to take the pull down.
Okay, can I defend myself here? There's a complete cluster going on in the main, the main block. The jib halyard line's gotten all sucked in, whatever. I have the classic, my head is in the bottom of the boat trying to anyway. So yes, we were trying to round apart.
You have a rat's nest, and we'd see that because you're about to hit a boat.
Yeah,
and then you look up and go, oh no! Right?
Yep.
George, can we back up? You
mentioned, of course we are, because there's 10 problems happening right here.
Yes,
absolutely.
Can we back up? You mentioned choking off the jib halyard and the lighter winds, downwind or reaching or both, and why?
So what happens is that when you go downwind, oh boy, okay. If we're going to tangent there, I've got to switch visuals. Hang on here. Wasn't sure I was going to go to this one, but here we go. Where is it? Please tell me it's close here. There we go. 1 second here. This was a clinic last summer, and we're going to go to the visual of downwind here. And that we go downwind, and when we get downwind, hang on a second, almost there. We go downwind. So as we go downwind, that we get the, come on. We have different spinnaker shapes. Now, not everybody sells big boats, but in big boats, if you're reaching, you want to have a pretty flat shape. And so that's our snipe reaching. To put the pole out, when we put the pole out reaching, we have to tighten the jib halyard to get that flat jib shape. Then we start going downwind, a little broader angle as it gets a little bit more breezy. And we get the halyard off a little bit, and we can get a little bit more deep sail. And then we get super deep. We want to make a really full runner if we could. Well, we don't have all those options in a snipe. We've got this stupid pole and this stupid jib. And in using that, we're tightening, it's not the best photo, but we're tightening this luff right here so that we can get the flow going across the sail. And so we want to make this into, a reverse jib. If you can picture those sails there. As it gets a little bit windier, we're going to ease the halyard off maximum. We're going to ease the jib cloth off, and we're going to try to sail more deep. We're going to pull the jib foot up so it's just kicking up down here on the foot, and we're going to try to sail deeper. So we've gone from a reachy setup to a running setup. And then we're going to go into, more of a control setup where the boats, instead of heeling one way or the other, we're going to sail flat down because we're just looking for control. Does that answer your question, Gavin?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you.
Okay, cool. Let me get rid of that. Back to where we were. Okay, so back to our buddy Alex. I'm on the wrong video. Sorry. So, Lisa, how is your pole connected on the mast? Up here, is the block on starboard or on port?
It's on port.
Okay, so that's what I was thinking. So this whole project becomes a problem about 2 years ago when you put that block on port. Okay, and we're gonna see is that Alex is getting ready for the mark. We're coming down, and Alex has the jib sheet or the pole launch line in his hand, and he starts. Wait, wrong. Hang on. Sorry.
I think you had the right one the first time you tried.
I think I did too. Okay.
Yeah, it's the one gone bad.
Okay,
the
sorry.
takedown gone bad.
So he gets the board down. He gets the board down, just pop it, pull it aft, flopper. Actually, he's got two hands here. All he has to do is pull the board and pull it aft. The flopper should pop up and it'll go down. So less is more. He doesn't have to work as hard there. And then as he comes here, he goes to uncleat the pole. But what we see here is as soon as we uncleat the pole is where things go bad. You can see right here that the pole's popping through the boom. Okay,
Thank you for noticing that, George.
Yeah, it doesn't get better.
No, it does not.
Because now he comes in, and because you have a rat's nest back here, and he's releasing this, our idea is that we want to go into the mark and we want the crew to ease the jib sheet a little bit, and the skipper pulls up the jib hard. And then now we're set up to go around. And then when we go to ease, we have a tighter foot of the jib, so that because the foot of the jib's tighter, then the pole's at a straighter angle to the boom and it should retract more easily. But as Alex sets himself up for failure here, he doesn't have a chance.
Thank you for blaming him, because most of it's my fault there, but.
Okay, but he doesn't have a chance here. And so now he's got to go and fix it, and he fixes and goes around pretty well. But what we can do.
Well, so here, I think the important thing, again, and this is much more beginner level, but because I'm so discombobulated at this point, I haven't, the boom is still against the, the boom is still against the stay. So there's no room for that pole to retract. So as a skipper, I needed to make sure the boom was off the, off the shroud.
I think it started in your garage. So
Alex will not want to hear this.
So after seeing this video, I went over into my garage, and this is my spare Snipe mast sitting in the ceiling, and I pulled the cover up, and we're on the starboard side of the mast right now. And looking at this mast, I'm like, okay, how would I have rigged it? Well, I like to put this eye strap just over 4 inches up above the band, and I have this big long piece of line. And in doing that, I feel that my pole is going to sit a little higher off of the gooseneck, and so hopefully it won't go in there. And then every tack and jibe we watch that you have a lot of friction in your pole, and so this piece of line I have, it wraps around my mast, and if I wrap this line around my mast, the rivet is just past the aft part of the mast, so that when the line's hanging down a little bit at an angle, the block can face the boom the other way. And so every time you tack and jibe, you want to have very little friction in the pole. And I think that's one thing that Alex is having, and even with you when you're jibing the boat in some of the videos, had a problem with jibing because it wasn't set up right. Lexi, how do you like to have your poles rigged?
I think it's the same way you have yours rigged. I can't recall exactly how it's rigged, but I know that when we're taking it down, I usually will pull, help it in. Because if you just let the bungee pull it in, that's like leaving room for it to get stuck in that triangle and stuff. So when I'm taking it down, I'll undo the launcher line, and then I'll give a yank on the sheets to make sure that it's going back against the boom and not in that triangle or something.
Yeah, on the weather sheet.
Skipper can do that.
Yeah,
too.
it gives you control of that, of where the pole is going.
It's actually easier for the crew to do. The skipper's got a bit on at that time.
Yeah.
And I find that technique, Lexi, is extremely important at the leeward mark after a second reach to get the. Yeah. So guys, otherwise, if you don't do that, then as you uncleat the pole slide back and try to hit you in the face. But if you pull on the jib sheet when you do that, it won't hit you in the face.
Yeah, for any reaching, you have to do that, or I have been smacked directly in the forehead by the end of a pole. It's not fun.
Yeah. So that's one of the things that just compound, and that's why I like to rig this pole differently. Henry, Gavin, you guys have rigged a lot of poles over the years on a lot of masts. Thoughts and differences on how to rig that to make it better?
I'm not the expert. This is Gavin. I'm not
Okay.
the expert on pole rigging.
Okay.
So I'll defer to you.
All right. This might not be the perfect system, but it's worked really well for me for many years, and so we've used it. Henry, you have another system?
No, I've used pretty much the same system. Candidly, my eye strap is not as far to the starboard side as yours is, and it's a little bit more right up in front, but it is as high as yours is to keep it out of that triangle when it comes back.
Okay.
And so I like that idea of making it a little further right, but definitely, you definitely don't want it on the port side.
Yeah. And so, Alex, we're picking on you right now because we think your blocks are mounted on the port side of the mast.
No, I think that's interesting. That the only thing that surprised me a little bit in the picture is just the length of the line puts the block a little farther aft than I would have anticipated.
And just being able to have that shiv work when the boom's on the starboard side, with the line, just makes your life a lot easier. It's every tack and jibe we had of you guys, of these things you showed, it was just super hard for you guys to get your pull out. And so we want to do that in one pull.
That's the crew's fault.
Well, I can bring up the one where you jibed, but yeah, it's definitely hard. Uh, so that's the rigging issue that I want to see. You know, just I'll run the shock cord on the whisker pole collar through that same eye and then down to a piece of rope, or actually a piece of rope through the eye, down a piece of shock cord so that it holds it as high as it can all the time. And it helps, you know, you can almost go through the Cunningham grommet if you want to. It reduces a lot of problems. So we'll go back to the original video. We'll go back to downwind. Downwind's like upwind, less is more. So here we go. We'll just let this run through. So first thing, we're being a little more aggressive on the chines, more FJ-like maybe. And even though the skipper calls the jibe, you really can't initiate the jibe until the crew begins to roll. So as we go through here and take this apart, you know, the crew, they're going to stand up and they're going to, as they, you know, you see Eric's measured out the line and he stands up, his left knee's against the board for support. You know, the skipper reaches across, reaches to the leeward, grabs a big chunk of main sheet. And as that you get that big chunk of main sheet, the boat starts to roll, you get a pump into the jibe. You try to keep it going the same speed into the jibe. The crew has their balance by putting their aft knee on the board. You know, sometimes even your heel against the back of the cockpit edge. And the pole, because you've worked on your pole launcher so hard, you know, the pole is about a foot from the water, maybe even closer before you release. So if the closer you can get, I mean, this might even be in later years we got closer to the water, and it comes across. The crew stays there. The skipper should stay there too. The skipper shouldn't move. And now the boom's crossed. You know, the crew stands up, pulls the pole out. You know, some of the guys can pull it out with one hand, some people do two. And what we missed as well is that as I came across, I pulled the main sheet in, and my left hand reached down, and right there is uncleating the old jib sheet. All right, and I've uncleated the old jib sheet. The pole's going out. I've already got my left hand on the new jib sheet, and I'm pulling that out so that I'm fighting the crew a little bit because they're fighting a full sail as they launch the pole. But as soon as that pole's out, boom, we got a full jib. And now the crew always comes across ideally at the same time. They come across, they get that pole out and they come right across. They never wait and hesitate because now that allows the skipper to decide how long they're going to stay there. The longer they stay there, the more the boat's going to roll, all right, or capsize if you hang out too long. And then you come across, you're going to do the main sheet switch, and as you get that main sheet switch, you can even get one more pump right here out of the jibe. You know, I think we can be even more aggressive than what we're doing right here, and I have been more aggressive in other years. It's the best video I've got though. You know, we come out of jibe, Eric will instantly measure out the jib sheet, roll, pop it, and we can also see that he doesn't release it all the way. The pole's just clearing the forestay, and he's able to do that time and again because he measures out that jib sheet before the jibe. You know,
George, I've got a comment for you.
absolutely.
Yeah, and this is more for people who are newer to the Snipe, but if I'm sailing with a new crew, what I always tell the crew is, hey, you stand up and deal with the pull. I will stay out of your way, because those arms are going, you know, in many directions as they deal with, you know, releasing the pull and relaunching the pull. So I give the advice, hey, you stand up on both of your feet, do what you got to do, and I'll stay out of your way. And that advice also goes to the skipper if you got a new crew, so just so they can kind of sort it out and figure it out. But you guys are very advanced here and experienced. But you know, I expect I don't know if I'm sure this training will be viewed by others who don't have as much experience with you guys. And so that's my starting point, is to deconflict each other and then refine, as you're talking about here.
Yeah, it's the timing that's the refinement, but the motion is always super simple. That the crew goes in to roll, bangs their head on the deck, uncleats, recleats, pulls back out, and the skipper does the sheets. And with that simple system, it's easier to find the timing because you already have a system that the crew's not going to bang their head on the boom, that they're clear of the vang and everything else. And so we've tried many systems over the years, and this system's just been super simple and worked out very well for us.
Hey, George.
Yeah.
For some of our less experienced crews, could you sort of stop in the middle of one of those jibes and show when Eric is releasing the pole and what the position of the boom is? Because that's the hardest thing for new crews to pick up, I think. Not only when to release to line up with the boom, but then when you go through the jibe, the timing of when they should launch for the new jibe.
So, Henry, I think my feeling is that even here, I don't want to release the later I release, the more power I get rolling into the jibe. If I release early, I have no sail area going in the jibe. So I like to, if I could, okay, right there, that pole's about 2 feet from the water. And if you get a foot from the water, you got to have a lot of confidence because you don't want to jam it in. But if you can get 1 to 2 feet from the water, it's the skipper's job now not to pump until that jib's coming back, and that takes a little bit of time. So if you're with a new crew and you're nervous, just okay, we're going to jibe, stand up, pop the pole. But here you're going to roll and then pop the pole. So that does take a little bit of timing there. And you can see I've already got the boom in at 45 degrees as that thing's coming back. And because we have the boat rigged the way we had it with the pole higher, I'm more confident that's not going to jam on that main tack. And then so, as soon as that boom crosses and the crew knows that pole's coming, it's almost like the boom crosses, they hang out, they can feel that their head's clean. Once their head's clean, they just stand up and they either do, he does several pulls here, or you just do one pull where your two hands end up above your head. So, it's where that is. He sits down, measures out. Yeah,
I think
I don't
it's
have
important to note too, like about weight when the crew is like leaning over the centerboard. When you get up to pull it back out, your weight is still, like your knees are still against the centerboard, putting weight on that. Like you don't want to stand up and all the way up to pull it out because you won't get that nice roll or like the. If I'm making sense.
No, I think what I like to look at is that my heels are against the cockpit edge and my knees are against the board, and I have a lot of control. I'm locked in. I can't fall out of the boat. I don't know where you stand, Lexi.
Well, no, I like lean all the way against the centerboard, but I'll keep my weight against the centerboard as I'm pulling out the pole on the new side, because oftentimes you're not all the way through you're not all the way through the jibe yet when you do that.
Right.
When he's pulling the pole out, he's almost still leaned over. I'm doing it.
That's interesting. I didn't even realize that, but he is.
It's been, I would say, for new people to snipe, it's so weird because you don't feel like you should be doing that, and you almost don't feel like you should be leaning against the board at all because it's this thin sheet of metal sticking up out of the middle of the boat. But I'll lean all the way over that and pull, like leaned over, if it's light enough.
Mm-hmm. That's.
You guys are pulling.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Well, is the crew pulling the pole in, and then once you roll, you're pulling it back out?
Mm-hmm.
No, the shock cord's pulling it in.
Yeah.
Shock cord pulls it in. Okay.
Yeah. And
you're just releasing it and letting it.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And so in the system that you use, and I'm actually noticing how different, an old dog's learning some new tricks. So I think we've typically brought the pole in too soon based on kind of what I'm watching here. And when we do that, in our method, it's really important for the skipper to kind of give that weather jib sheet a tug to initiate the pole retracting. And doesn't look like you need to do that in this system. Is that true, George?
No, we'll focus on making that pole system run as cleanly as we can. That's why I brought the photo of how we rig our pole, because I want that to come back. And I've got our shock cord rigged as well, so that it's a 3-to-1 shock cord that comes out the front of the boom. And if we have a bad jibe or two, we will reach up and tighten that shock cord, during a run, and make sure it works better.
I've also seen crews, like when they do their roll and they pop the pole, they pop it with one hand, their forward hand, and with their aft hand, they reach down for the jib sheet and give that a tug, and that kind of helps the pole come in.
Yeah.
And so if you want to do that, when I crewed a Snipe for Regatta, I tried this. You have to learn how to pop the pole out with one hand.
Yeah.
You kind of
Really
do
neat
that
thing-
by
yeah.
pressing your thumb against the block. Like after you've pulled the sheet out, you press your thumb against the block, and with your pinky finger, you reach forward and pop it out of the cleat. And so while your thumb is pressed against the block, it won't let the line run any more than what you've pulled out. Like when you pulled out the line, like predetermine the length. And so since you're doing that with one hand, with the other hand, you reach it over the board so you can help roll. And then what else you can do is you can like grab the old jib sheet and give it a tug. And that kind of helps the pole come in if there's something wrong with your shock cord, if there's a lot of friction or something.
And in our boat, my method was, because again, not all shock cords are perfect. That as a skipper, I was always trying to make sure that we gave that little tug. So.
Yeah, we the only time we give it a tug is if it's the leeward mark and we're dropping it. We don't want to hit the crew in the face.
Yeah.
That's Lex, are you tugging it at all? You're not there. All right.
So I do reiterate what Lexi said too. I do think for people who are new to a Snipe, for crews who are new to a Snipe, that centerboard, while it seems like a scary slab in the middle of the boat, is actually your friend, right? Particularly downwind, particularly in the bumpy conditions we have here on the Chesapeake, that can create a lot of balance for you. I mean, now that we're showing us where you'll see I'm leaning against the board a lot, right?
Is that your knees are contacted with the board all the time, even when you're pulling the pole out. You might, like I said, you might still be like almost doubled over to keep your weight where it needs to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So Alex had one neat thing as well that he had shared on his multiple videos. And that was something that you forget about when it gets really windy. And when it's windier, what Alex is doing here is that he's coming across here. Well, let's not look at that part. Let's look at this part. What Alex is doing here is it's a heavier jibe, let's say. And what he's doing, he stands up and he comes behind here's over the board. But if it's a heavier jibe, we want to go behind the board, not over the board. And at the same time, we want to grab the vang. We don't want to grab the vang there. We want to grab the vang closer to the boom if we can. And this is a really good thing to do at a jibe mark when it's blowing 15 to 20 or more. And that if you get to that jibe mark and the boom doesn't come across and it goes back out, you're done. You capsize. And so we want to make sure that at certain times, the heavier jibes, that the boom's going to come across. The other thing we want to make sure of in the heavier jibe is the bow stays out of the water. And by going after the board and helping, you basically stand up, you pop the pole, you go after the board, you help pull the boom across, and then you pull the pole back out. It's a really effective technique to not die when it's blowing strong breeze and you got a jibe. So
I would say, I don't think that when doing jibes, pulling the boom over is not optional. Like, that gets hairy real quickly.
Right. So what's your technique, Leslie? When you're gonna do that?
I'm trying to think because it happens so quickly that you kind of go by instinct almost. I'm trying to. Yeah, I think when Augie and I were sailing together in Brazil and it was super windy and we were doing the Olympic triangles. I would grab it close to that block and I would aggressively pull it over. It's not even just to help. You are bringing that boom from one side to the other around that jibe mark. Because like you said, if you don't get it, you'll capsize or you'll screw something up. And those marks tend to be super crowded. So literally every maneuver counts.
Yeah. So those are the big points that I wanted to point out, seeing what the planes did for us and what the difference are that Eric and I did. And those are the big things that there's simple steps that if you can work on those simple steps, you can work towards, working together and have more success out there. That's what I wanted to share this evening. So.
Okay, so I have, do you want to share back unless, does anybody want him to rerun or show any other videos? Or any other sail trim questions that he might have in his little bag of computer files and computer photos?
Nope, we're good. Okay.
So hey, one more thing that I realized that we probably want to talk to is, again, this is a mixed group of kind of new to Snipes and not new to Snipes. It's just kind of around, doing just a basic pole set or a pole takedown. Do you want to kind of talk about some of that order of magnitude, what you do first, what you do next? Just kind of running through your checklist, like when you're rounding a mark.
So you're getting into leeward mark. You'll change your main sheet hand from maybe above the ratchet to below the ratchet. And then you'll grab the jib halyard and say, okay, jib halyard coming up. And the crew's like, okay, jib halyard's coming up. So I'll start pulling the jib halyard up. And typically it's 2 pulls to get the jib halyard up with the purchase we have. And the crew at that point knows that they need to ease the jib sheet so I can get the jib halyard up. So that everything's.
Do you have a rule of thumb of kind of how many boat lengths out you do that?
It changes on the wind condition, but if you can do it 3 lengths out or 5 lengths out, whatever you need to do. It depends on traffic. You might do that a little sooner if there's a lot of traffic. You think you'll drop your pole sooner to just dodge boats or whatever. It'll change. If you can do it 2 lengths before and in 6 knots in Mission Bay, go for it. If you're by yourself, it changes for the water and wind conditions. So we'll do that right away. After that, the crew might put on a little bit of jib cloth. They probably won't always. Usually then you're just jibing or rounding up and trying to go upwind. And as soon as you're turning, the crew's got the jib Cunningham, the main Cunningham going back on, and then we'll suck up the vang as we go upwind there. Once you make that turn, you're hiking out, crew looks at the compass, figures out if you're lifted or headed. So that's really pretty simple in that part. We're not playing the outlaw on the run.
So I'm thinking about when you're going around a weather mark, like when you're setting. Yeah.
So weather mark, as you go around the weather mark, as the boat's turning down, you want to keep your weight to weather. But the first thing you do is you lean in once the boat's under control and you're popping off the jib halyard. Jib halyard's off, the crew's starting to launch. Then you're going to instantly reach down and grab the jib sheet. I've seen some worlds people have a mark on the jib sheet and they'll cleat it there and it works out better for them. We haven't ever done that. We probably should, but we just get the jib sheet going right away. And at that point, if you haven't eased your vang a little bit already, you're easing your vang and you're trying to settle on and go. The crew gets the jib cloth and main Cunningham and off you go. You check your lane and see if you have one or see if there's European going high. So it's that's the system there. But the first thing is, I want to get that jib going because that jib's such a critical, big part of the sail, of the sail plan. So
from a crew's perspective, they rounding, they're immediately launching the pole, and then once the pole is set, then they're going for the centerboard.
Going for the centerboard, and it's really important too is that crew goes for the centerboard. They can't stay on the weather side, or they got to get to the middle of the boat or the center of the boat to raise that centerboard. Otherwise, you're capsizing the weather, and life's getting really difficult, especially if it's windy. They really got to get to leeward a little bit. Lexi, thoughts on that?
If there's a windward with an offset too, your board will probably be up halfway anyway when you launch.
Okay.
It depends on who you ask. Augie would make me do it. Some other people are not as keen on it. I think it depends.
Yeah. That's a good thing to do. So that's what we're up to there. Nothing earth-shattering. All right. We good there? Or we kill it?
I have a fundamental question. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
The fundamental question is, what is the purpose of holding the main sheet above the block going downwind as opposed to holding it in back of the block?
You can cheat better. I don't know. One, you get the pressure off the ratchet.
It's one part, either side of the block, right?
I don't know.
I mean, everybody does it, but me.
This is Gavin. I think it's better feel. I think it's potentially less resistance, because if you're going through the ratchet, then you're getting a little bit of resistance. So it's better feel.
It's gonna be ergonomics too. That if your arm's going this way, it's easier than pulling up and down. Maybe.
Not me.
No.
I mean, and I'm one of those guys that qualifies for a lot more than 20 years. Like 3 times that amount. But I look at this and I say, okay, what are the boats I've sailed? I sailed 5 of those for 30 years. I sailed Lightnings for 15 years, and I get into the Snipe 5 years ago and have hardly sailed it. Never held the main sheet in any of the boats I sailed above the block, going downwind.
I definitely like it. And like saying 5-6 knots in a starboat, I like to hold it above the block just because you get a better feeling for this boat and how it's sailing. That it's like the crew holding the spinnaker sheet. They can feel the puffs and lulls, and if you can just get that little bit more sensitivity, sometimes you can, really have a nice feel to know when you can go up and down. That's one reason I'll hold it above there for the lighter air.
To say
When I got there Sunday, it's the first thing I'll try.
the other reason from particularly in lighter air where your crew is on that leeward rail is if you have it through the block, you're like half the time the block's going across the crew's or the sheet's going across the crew's life jacket. So if you have it up a little bit, you've given your crew a little bit more room.
That's a fair reason, I guess.
But feel is the main thing. But the side benefit is making a little more room for your crew. So,
all right.
Okay, well, it looks like I'm back to being the host. Any other questions? All right, so go ahead.
A couple questions from a Snipe newbie here, and first one coming from some Lightning experience. We use when y'all were talking about jibing the boom, especially around jibe marks when it's real breezy. What we use on the Lightning, we call it a jibing line. Basically, we just tie a piece of line to the shackle that's at the block on the boom directly above the ratchet block, and it just ties down to a ring that is just floating on the main sheet between the boom block and the ratchet block, a ring just like y'all use for the Traveler to take up some of the slack. And what that does is we're allowed to grab it, and it provides a 1-to-1 for the skipper to just grab that ring and just pull the boom across. Is that class legal for the Snipe or not?
Probably.
I've seen it on
I
Snipe.
have the same thing on my Snipe. I mean, I sailed Lightnings and had the same thing. So it just hangs about midway between the last block on the boom and the ratchet in the cockpit. You just grab it and you're 1-to-1.
Something to try.
Yeah.
It's a great question, Carter. I don't know.
Second question. Unless we're good with that. Another question coming from my collegiate experience: how come y'all don't put the dagger boards down when you're jibing? Is it just because the crew's got a little too much to do dealing with the whisker pole line? Because what I've always felt is that when the board's down, especially when you're flattening out of the jibe, the boat's just got a little more resistance, and the flatten can be a little more smooth and powerful if you've got the board down. And with the video you were showing us, George, of you ways back, it seemed like when you would hop over and sit on the windward side, the boat would flatten a little quickly. It was pretty rocky. And I feel like that maybe you could get some more power if the board was down from having a slower flatten, and not only using the force of the sails moving through the air when you flatten, but the board moving underwater too, and providing just more foil area, more lift for when you're flattening the boat with just the motion of it going through the water.
It might be worth a try. I think you should give it a try. The hard part was that this thing's so darn heavy, you got to lift it back up before, you go drive again. You got to drop it again, because that can be more clunky and difficult to get up and down, because you can't lean out and be on the side of the boat in light air and lift the board up. You got to lean over and get above the board to pull it up, because it's so heavy. Otherwise, you'll throw your back out. So,
True.
Probably worth giving a try, but you might burn up a few crews.
Right. And not to mention, as we talked about, the crews in a Snipe really use the up part of the centerboard as a lever for their roll, right?
Okay.
So really they press against
That's
it.
true.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
It's not like, and it's also not like you pulled the board all the way up. There's still stuff in the water. It's just not as much as that board is stupidly large. So
Yeah.
you might be able to go. I mean, it'd be interesting to see to go because there's 2 notches. There's like the reaching notch and then the full downwind notch on some boards. It'd be interesting to see if you could put it down to the reaching notch and give you a little bit more, but not the whole thing. I have no idea how that would work, but it is something to try.
Give it a try.
I'll hop
Tell
in
us on Monday.
I'll hop in the crew spot for a bit this weekend, and I'll see how it feels and if it's feasible or not.
All right, we'll get some. Hopefully, someone gets some video of both methods and see what happens.
I can crew.
All right. Any other questions? Did somebody else have a question? All
I'm
right.
just saying, I definitely want to be crew this weekend after listening to or watching all the videos. So
Yeah, we for sure the one thing we've always said about the Snipe. The only thing that we've always said that about the Snipe is, and I actually, if anybody had a chance to watch the little kind of discussion that Augie and George did on the, what do you call that thing? The quantum chat, whatever
Forget what we
hour.
call it. Yeah.
Shooting the breeze.
Thank you.
Breeze, that's it. Just the importance of the crew. The crew in a Snipe has way more work than the skipper. So it's anyway, yeah, it's fun.
Well, and speaking of crew importance, another thing that depending on your skill level crews can handle is I do the vang. Like I handle the vang all the time, especially when I'm sailing with Augie. Like that is typically different than other boats. That's a crew responsibility.
Well, I think
if you're feeling up to it.
Right. And Lexi is starting to learn this as she's crewed for different people, but certainly in my 100 years of crewing on a Snipe that, man, every skipper is different, right? And it's really helpful if you can work with the same skipper and crew team because you learn each other's strengths and weaknesses and you kind of get a feel for how you want to divide up the duties.
Yeah, I have to agree with that statement. I tried to give Brian the vang control for one regatta, and I decided he was no longer allowed to have that because we would argue. I'd be reaching over and be like, "No, take it off a little bit." He'd be pulling it back on, like, "No, take it off a little bit." So it's one of the things I've just decided I'm keeping it back with me now.
Yeah.
Zach, have you sailed on Slush Fund before?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I thought that was you. I can't see your face very well.
Yeah, I know. My bad lady down here.
Nice. Very good. Yeah, I got thrown on a 505 and it was the first time dinghy sailing ever. And the guy was really good, but he yelled at me for the whole weekend, 3 days straight. But we got through the weekend and did pretty well. And it was a lot of fun. But
I think that's how all of us started. We all got thrown in for someone and got yelled at the whole time.
Yep.
Another rule about Snipe sailing: happy boats go faster.
That's right. That's right.
The typical deal with Spanish people who yell at you in Spanish the whole time, so you don't know what they're telling you.
Very good.
All right.
Well, thanks for doing this, guys.
Yeah, so I want to just do a quick little housekeeping since we're supposed to be no contact for Sunday. We are not going to really have any meetings or other kind of group talks on the land on Sunday. And I may send out some stuff between now and then, but just kind of, I had paused my screen share. I got to resume my share. Just the quick housekeeping that we are still under COVID restrictions, so we're not supposed to be lumped into more than 10 people. So, try and avoid like all being at the same part of the lot for rigging or being all in the same hoist or whatever. And we really do need to enforce the face masks and buffs work. You just have to have them, and anytime you're anywhere close to somebody, make sure you're pulling it up. And just the standard, if you're not feeling good that day, if you've been around somebody, please don't come. So, Gavin and Henry, do you want to say anything more just about kind of how you see the day going?
Gavin, go ahead.
I'll start unless Henry's wants to start.
No, go ahead.
My thoughts are, I'm looking at the spreadsheet that Lisa sent over to me, and it looks like we've got like 12 plus boats. Is that right?
12 boats, I think. Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So that's quite a few. And for a clinic, it's always better to have a smaller group with somebody behind in a coach boat. So we're definitely going to need to divide and conquer. I think if we do in fact have 12 boats out there, then we want 2 coach boats, and probably want to split into 2 groups for certain stuff. We can bring folks together for the starting line, but my thoughts, and I'm speaking my thoughts here because Henry and I and Lisa haven't discussed this formally, but my thoughts are do some boat handling based on what George has shared with us tonight. Set up a small triangle, or maybe 2 triangles if we have 2 sets of 6 boats, and have the coach boat chase around the folks on the water with a video camera and capture some of that so we can feed that back to the people. And then they can think about how that compares with what George showed us tonight. So do some boat handling triangles, some starts. If it was a smaller group, I'd have a different plan, but with a larger group, I think we have a larger starting line, and we capture how people approach that and deal with the last 45 seconds and acceleration, stuff like that, capture that on video as well. Prior to getting underway, I would suggest, I think we've got some folks with more experience than others, so maybe we try to partner up the experienced folks in one boat with a less experienced boat, just to make sure that they understand what all the parts do, how the rig works, how the rig tune lines work, so that we're all kind of hopefully drinking from the same sheet of music, so to speak. We don't have a lot of time, but I think we compartmentalize it and we try to capture some of the video and then share it back with folks next week. That's my thoughts, which I haven't, like I said, I haven't shared with Henry or Lisa yet.
I think you guys could have a lot of fun and have a start line and let one boat off at a time every 20, 30 seconds and try to tack every 3 lengths. And if you're up for it, every 2 lengths. And when you get better, tack every boat length and see how things get better. The first lap, you would have a lot of problems to go every 4 lengths because there's a lot of discussion. As it gets better, that would be kind of fun to spend half an hour getting everybody completely out of breath. Trying to roll tack.
It's supposed to be blowing fairly well on Sunday.
Well, don't roll tack then.
10 to 15 with gusts to 20 right now.
Never mind.
Yeah, I think the forecast changed a little bit from a couple days ago.
Yeah. Hey, Lisa, how quickly are you going to put out the recording of this?
Great question.
Like tomorrow morning?
Yeah, definitely before Sundays, because I know there's a couple people who are going to be there on Sunday who are not on the call, so it would benefit them to take a look at it.
Yeah, this young lady that's going to sail with me is very new to One Design Sailing. She's very enthusiastic, but she said, I just can't. I got a family commitment. But if you send me anything you can, I'll look at it before Sunday. So
okay. Yeah, I'll try and get that out either tonight or tomorrow morning.
Great, thank you.
Henry, did you have anything else to add?
The only thing, my 2 cents is I agree with everything Gavin said, and I think some boat handling drills with tacking and jibing, maybe on the whistle type of stuff would be good. And with a larger group, I would say also do your best when you get out there to stay close to whatever's going on, because it's really easy to get drifted apart. And we're, if there's 12 boats and 10 are ready to go and we're waiting for 2, it sort of slows down the whole game. That being said, that you might get in a situation where you got a big tangle on the main sheet or something that you got to drop out for a second and handle that, and just tell the coaches that you're doing that and we could keep going. But to Gavin's point, it's a little more difficult to have a group of 12 than it is a group of 6. So if we can just sort of communicate what we're going to do, and I would say before we go out on Sunday, we should have an idea of what drills we want to do. And what setups we're going to do. So I'm not sure how we communicate that because we're not allowed to get together, but that would be my thought.
Yeah, Gavin and Henry, if we have any other thoughts that you want to communicate out, I've got a good email list for people. If you guys could just make sure to check your emails, maybe Sunday morning, if there's any kind of updates or changes, just make sure you're checking your email before you come down to the club.
Yeah,
and
Henry,
with that being said, if there's any.
I was just going to say, let's, Henry, you and I put our heads together maybe before noon tomorrow or something, or certainly before 5 o'clock tomorrow. And then we can map out a plan and then share that back with Lisa, and then she can share that with the folks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And also
that
too,
sounds
just,
good.
you know, there's definitely a broad range of talents. So there's, you know, people who are really experienced, people just coming out of college. There's people who are, you know, so I like to call it the next gen. There's also, you know, some of us in, I don't know, past gen, old gen. So, you know, there's
The has been Jen.
the has been gen.
I want to meet Jen.
Yeah.
And then
I've
there's
never
me.
met Jen.
Right. So, you know, there may be, you know, I don't know if it's even possible to even split some of us kind of once you get some of that going. I don't know. But we'll talk a little bit about that.
I want
offline and
Jen.
get back. Gin, not Jen.
Or rum.
There you go. All right. Well, thanks, guys. Thank you, George. And we'll do my plan. I've kind of got a Zoom call set up for Monday at 7:30. Hopefully, we'll be able to get any video together and be able to review it again, kind of online, like, you know, a post clinic talk, chalk talk sort of thing after the clinic on Monday. So, all right.
Cool.
Any other questions?
Thank you,
Thank you.
George. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Thank you
Thanks,
guys.
George. Good to see you.
Good to see you guys.
Thanks.
All right. We'll
Thanks,
see you guys
George.
on Sunday. Thanks. Bye.
All right,
Take
Bye
care.
for now.
Thanks,
see you
Lisa.
Monday.
Thank you.